You are watching CBS News 24/7, our news organization, listening to the President of the United States, calling the President of South Africa literally on the carpet there in front of the world press. Narrative setting, arguably, on something that he wants to talk about. We knew that the President of South Africa wanted to go in and talk about trade. The President said, yeah, we'll talk about trade, but, and then he wanted to talk about what he is calling a potential genocide of white farmers in South Africa. And the President of the United States came with what he would argue are receipts, video clips, putting the President of South Africa on the defense, having to explain not only from his perspective, but the perspective of his Secretary of Agriculture in that area, why they believe that this is not only a problem, but also something that needs the help of the United States. Arguably bringing in Liz Cook here now. Liz, fascinating time, arguably, when we talk about fiery meetings at the White House that have fireworks and headlines that come, I would say this is a second to the last one we saw, which is President Zelensky of Ukraine. This one will be a close second where fireworks are concerned at the White House.
A close second, that's for sure. And Trump repeatedly went after members of the media, too, for questions that they were asking during that bilateral meeting. I want to get to Natalie Brand now. She is outside the building where that is happening. She's outside the White House. Natalie, another explosive meeting inside the Oval Office. You've been watching the entire thing. What stood out to you immediately?
Hi, Liz. Well, this meeting started very calmly and cordially. It was during questioning by reporters when there was this extraordinary moment of President Trump calling for his staff to play this clip, which is pushing essentially these claims of genocide and attacks on white farmers in South Africa. This clip went on for some time, and then the president of South Africa, Ramaphosa, tried to essentially respond. Take a listen to some of what he had to say.
That were being made. One, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately, through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now
the farmers are black. The farmers are not black. I don't say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. And the people that are being killed in large numbers, and you saw all those grave sites, and those are people that loved ones going, I guess on a Sunday morning, they told me, to pay respect to their loved ones that were killed. Their heads chopped off, they died violently, and you know, I mean, we're here to talk about it, and I didn't know we'd get involved here, but I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake like NBC, which is fake news, totally one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. They don't want to talk about it, but now they have to talk about it.
So again, this extraordinary exchange happening in front of cameras in real time, the South African president having to respond on the fly to a video that he likely did not know was coming. And I can't really give you context about that video because I'm not sure exactly what was played in there since we're watching the head-on camera. But again, what we do know is it was pushing these discredited claims of genocide and land seizure, which the President Trump, continues to claim is happening. Earlier in this in this conversation before cameras, he said this is something that will likely be discussed. And President Ramaphosa of South Africa said he wanted President Trump to hear from his delegation, including his white Minister of Agriculture, to kind of share their perspective around this issue. The Minister of Agriculture at one point also started talking and acknowledged that there are attacks on farms that occur and that they're trying to prioritize that as a crime, but that, that's very different than these claims of genocide, which obviously the government disputes, and even a South African judge said this is just not real. But obviously very contentious turn of events here, even though I have to note the South African president is staying very calm throughout this. He's known for his negotiating skills. He's known by people who cover him as a famous negotiator who helped negotiate the end of apartheid in the 1990s when he was working with Nelson Mandela. So obviously, there's a lot of history here. He started this conversation by saying he wanted to reset relations between the United States and South Africa, but now we're seeing this unexpected turn of events happening play out in real time, Liz.
It was remarkable to watch now, and I believe our producers here at CBS News 24/7 are efforting replaying that video. I'm just going to talk to them for a second. Do we have that video to play back yet? We do. All right. I want to get to that video, and we're going to watch it together, and oh, no sound on it now. But as you were saying, Natalie, this is the video that was played for the delegation from South Africa, including the president. And this, Trump says, is the receipts that he was referencing, that there is genocide going on in South Africa. It was a very explosive moment inside the Oval Office. And can you give us kind of a sense of, you weren't able to watch the video, but as the video was playing, what was the reaction from the people from South Africa? Were they shocked to see this?
I mean, we'll have to talk to them afterwards. But again, notable that, the delegation remains so calm, trying to explain their perspective and their side of what's going on. They obviously have, more intimate knowledge of what's being played on the clip. And we heard President Ramaphosa address some of that in the exchange that we heard when we started the show. But, this all comes as the Trump administration has about a week and a half ago accepted a group of white Afrikaners into the United States for resettlement, giving them refugee status, even as the administration restricts other groups from coming in, again, because of these claims of genocide and persecution and land seizures, which the government disputes. And it's also notable, Liz, that inside that meeting, we know is Trump ally and advisor Elon Musk, who himself grew up in South Africa and has helped to, amplify some of these claims.
And what was his reaction to when all of this was happening? Were we able to see that at all? I was not able to see that in the cutaway camera. I will note that at one point in the video, they were showing white crosses, which President Trump said represented some of the farmers who had been killed. And President Ramaphosa of South Africa did ask, he said, well, where is that? Do you know where that is? I'd like to know more about that and visit that. So obviously this is catching him and his team off guard. He came here, Liz, in speaking to reporters ahead of this meeting with really the sole purpose of trying to get a trade deal. South Africa, facing a lot of economic concerns, high unemployment. We know that a priority of his in coming here and talking to the president is trying to secure a trade deal and bring down the tariffs that were announced back in April by the White House on South Africa. So he was hoping for an economic conversation. And again, that's really how this exchange between the two leaders started, saying, I want to reset
relationships. We are trade partners. We have a history here. He even referenced critical minerals. And then once again, similar to what we saw during the infamous meeting with Zelensky, it was during the reporter questioning when things really took a turn.
Yeah, and he definitely went after members of the media there, as he did in this particular bilateral meeting. All right, Natalie, thank you so much for breaking that down for us. I want to go back inside the Oval Office for more on this meeting with President Donald Trump and the President of South Africa. I believe they're talking about trade right now. Listen in.
Chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer, and at the end they, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers to produce the food.
Farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing, right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those two things you can't survive.
How is the water there?
The water is great, obviously. All the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the water out.
So does your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
there's nowhere to live.
Both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult. But the guys live a great life despite everything going on.
Something.
President Trump, I brought along the president of the largest trade union in our country, Ziggy Solosi, because she leads many, many workers, more than 1 million, 2 million workers. And maybe we should give her a chance to say something, because she's come all the way to join us.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Trump, for having us, and President for extending the invitation to us as organized labor. And I must say that we are here to support the initiative that has been made by our government with business, of course, as organized labor. We've been coming to Washington on the AGOA trade relations in the previous regime, and I think at the center of it all, for me, it is exactly what Mr. Rupert has said, the importance of us growing the economy. We have always emphasized when we were here and kept on coming and negotiating on AGOA that the 600 US companies that are based in South Africa, as you said, President Ramaphosa, 500,000 jobs will be wiped out. We need more foreign direct investment in our country. We are not just talking about those that will lose employment, but we are talking about over 40% of people that are unemployed, that have no hope of ever finding a job. And we think that, correctly, as they have said, that we need to deal with the issue of porous borders in our country, so that everyone that comes in is documented. We also need to, and I would have thought that the minister would address the issue of land expropriation and how the policy works in South Africa. Recently, President, as you were preparing to come here on the news, in, I think it was in Natal, there was a handover of farms, and white farmers were saying, we are donating the land, but also there's a willing buyer, willing seller in South Africa. So there is no expropriation without compensation, but it is a willing buyer, willing seller. And that white farmer was even saying, President, that the government is even paying more in buying the land than what the land is worth of. And I think those are the realities, President, that we must say that we need to address, of course, but also the importance of agriculture linked to AGOA. People rely on it, and I think, as Retief have said, for survival and living. But lastly, for me, President, is also the issue of the crime statistics. There is no doubt about it that we are a violent nation, for a number of reasons, and we're not condoning anything. But also, if you go into the rural areas, where black majority are, you would see women, elderly, being raped, being killed, being murdered, and these are black elderly women that would be found throat slits, raped multiple times, and all of that. And the problem in South Africa, it is not necessarily about race, but it is about crime. And we think that we are here to say, how do we, both nations, work together to reset, to really talk about investment, but also help us in how we can have the technology and everything that is needed, President, to really address the levels of crime that we have in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
President Trump,
genocide is a very strong word. I'm wondering if you've made up your mind as to whether you believe genocide is occurring in South Africa, or you still doubt, and if you have made up your mind, why invite President Ramaphosa here today?
Well, I haven't made up my mind. I hate to see it from the standpoint of South Africa, but also, I'm trying to save lives. I'm working with Russia and Ukraine. I don't have to do that. It's not our war. It was started by other people. It was helped along by our past administration. It would have never happened if I were president, but I'm trying to save lives, no matter where. Rwanda, I have nothing to do with Rwanda and the Congo, but I felt I had a very talented person in this administration, and I sent him there, and he did an unbelievable job, I think. I mean, we're going to find out, but he's done the hardest part of the job. It should happen. If I can save lives, I want to save the lives. If it's in Africa, that's great. If it's in Europe, if it's wherever it may be. And it's a very small investment to do, believe me, compared to what the consequences are. So I hope we can do something. Look, I have so many friends. These two men, I have great admiration for them because I know what they do for a living. Yeah. And that's a very hard living, going from city to city, from country to country, and hitting a ball 350 yards like they do, and
better than you and I.
Getting the ball in the hole. It's a very tough, with lots of people watching, right?
Yes,
That's a very tough living. They're champions. I respect champions. And I respect very much, and I think the country is very lucky. They really wanted to be here.
That's true.
They could be elsewhere. They could be on a beautiful fairway someplace, and they wanted to be here. So.
My name is Yanda Global from Newsroom Africa in South Africa. Good. How important is it for the United States?
President Donald Trump and the president of South Africa, they're meeting in the Oval Office, a meeting that turned explosive with talks of genocide that President Trump is claiming is going on in South Africa. He even played a very explosive video for the president of South Africa to react to. The people that are there from South Africa saying there's no doubt violence and crime is happening, but not what the president is saying, genocide that's happening in that country. I want to go back out live to CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand, who's outside the White House, been watching very closely this very explosive meeting that's going on inside the Oval Office. Natalie, it's worth noting, we checked back in with you, a few moments ago and then went back into that meeting. But when we went back, we saw that there were some South African golfers that were also there that were supporting President Trump's claims. Retief Goosen was there, Ernie Els, Gary Player. They were all in the room as well. I want to go back to just sort of the general scope of what this meeting was, Natalie, and really the highlights for you.
My understanding is the famous golfers were part of the South African delegation because South African President Ramaphosa noted that he brought a number of people with him to kind of help, convey some of the views from, politics, obviously the government officials and leaders, but also a trade union representative, business folks, and then the famous golfers. He even at the beginning of this meeting, which I noted was very cordial, he said that he brought a gift for President Trump, a golf book, kind of detailing some of the famous courses in his country. So that's how, again, this started, a hope to reset relations. That was what was expressed by President Ramaphosa before we saw this turn and this video played by President Trump on the fly, although obviously he had the infrastructure to play that video, but it was definitely caught everyone else in the room off guard. And I know that our CBS News Confirmed team is working to look into that video and kind of learn more about exactly what everyone was seeing. But that launched a discussion by both sides about, you know, the debate here, which again, just to be clear, the South African government, a judge in the country, and many others say that those claims of genocide are completely false, despite what President Trump is saying, and despite claims amplified by Elon Musk, who, as we discussed, is also from South Africa. What they were discussing is, and what you alluded to, these attacks on farms, which the South African delegation is explaining is impacting, you know, not only white farmers, but also black majority areas as well. We also know, you know, that something that's going to be discussed in this meeting, which is taking place very publicly, we'll see what happens when it transitions to private, is a land law that was passed earlier in the year in South Africa, giving the government the ability to, in certain circumstances, seize land for the public benefit and equity reasons if negotiations with the owner of that land fail. The government saying that it's targeting really unused land here, but that is a law that really caught the attention of the Trump administration and is part of these larger claims of land being seized and other, you know, attacks on farmers. So I think, Liz, what we've been discussing, what's so notable here is that all of this is playing out in front of these cameras, but we've also been talking about, you know, the president of South Africa really maintaining his cool here, remaining very calm, and this is something that he's known for, being, you know, a famous negotiator in South Africa, and really came here to try to, you know, charm Trump and get a trade deal out of this.
And we're told, Natalie, that meeting just wrapped up. They're now going to go into private meetings outside the glare of the press there. But explosive is the best adjective I know how to describe that meeting, a close second to the one we saw with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. So we're going to talk more about this meeting coming up later on this show right here on CBS News 24/7. Don't go anywhere. Developing news in the high-stakes negotiations to get President Trump's budget bill passed through Congress. The House Freedom Caucus will meet with President Trump this afternoon at the White House. Now, remember, it was just yesterday when President Trump visited Capitol Hill himself and said the party was united. The House Rules Committee has debated for more than 12 hours now to get that bill up for a vote, and there's still no deal. That all started at 1 a.m., and many Democrats say the overnight timing of this debate was intentional.
This is important stuff, and it's going to impact a lot of our constituents, yours included. And this debate should happen in the light of day, and the fact that it isn't, basically, I believe, is because you guys don't want people to know what is in this bill.
I suspect Democrats will make the false claim that this bill rewards the rich at the expense of the poor. But that tired talking point was wrong following the enactment of the 2017 Trump tax cuts, and it is definitely wrong under this bill today.
It is going to increase the debt and the deficit by $3.5 trillion or thereabouts. So whatever we cram into this bill, whatever $150 billion I guess they're going to try to throw at defense, will be irrelevant a year or two or 3 or 4 years from now, because our $35 trillion debt will continue to grow. Our $1.8 trillion yearly deficit will continue to grow. You won't have money to make an investment in anything, not even defense.
Okay, let's get right to CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small. We have some new analysis out from the Congressional Budget Office. What is it telling us about this bill?
Yeah, so it kind of reaffirmed, Liz, some of the things that we've already talked about. For example, the $3.8 trillion price tag that comes with extending Donald Trump's 2017 tax plan. The CBO said that it would increase the federal deficit of about $3.8 trillion because of that. But these are some things that Republicans are talking about in this analysis. $698 billion less in federal subsidies based off of the changes to Medicaid that the program or that this bill is looking to push forward. About $267 billion less in federal spending for food stamps, or the program also known as SNAP. But again, the reason why we're in these 11th hour negotiations, although it's technically 12 hours based on how long this House Rules Committee has been going on for, is because there are some Republicans who are still uneasy with that massive price tag and are arguing there aren't enough offsets to justify going forward with this amount of spending. Now, what we do know is, and this is according to Representative Andy Harris, the White House last night offered the House Freedom Caucus a proposal that made two major changes. One included more cuts to Medicaid, the other that would push forward the timeline on when work requirements would be attached to that, as well as the rollback of Biden-era tax credits for EV and green initiatives. According to Representative Harris, the House Freedom Caucus accepted this proposal, but like you said, Liz, we're still waiting for the details as this amendment hasn't yet made it to the House Rules Committee, and it certainly hasn't been made public.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of watch this all play out, Tori, and to me it feels like a game of whack-a-mole. They make concessions to one group and that offends somebody else, and it's hard to kind of make everybody happy. But we have to ask, why were the lawmakers working overnight on this? It started at 1 a.m., that of course attracting some criticism as we mentioned before. But have they given any justification why it had to start at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, it depends on who you ask. According to the speaker, the goal was to push this through as quickly as possible so it could meet the deadline that he set to get it to the House floor before the Memorial Day weekend. Now that it's running late, it's not too clear if that will still be possible. But if you talk to Democrats, they'll say the reason why Republicans are doing this, and this is the arguments that we just heard in that soundbite there, is because they're looking to push through these changes without this back and forth being made public. The reason why, according to Democrats, they're looking to push through is because they know that there are some unsavory things in this bill that the vast majority of Americans won't support. Republicans are pushing back on that and saying this is procedural and they have the rights to get this done, especially considering the length of this debate so far. They say the reason why they're doing this is for efficiency's sake, and again, they're looking to get this done by Memorial Day weekend.
And we mentioned that President Trump is going to be meeting with the House Freedom Caucus later on this afternoon. What are we looking for there? We're looking to see whether or not they'll come out with true consensus. There were fractures in the Republican Party going into these deliberations that are happening now, and we know that there are going to be some people unsatisfied. The real main sides of this are folks within the House Freedom Caucus who want to see deeper spending, and then you have folks within what's known as the SALT Caucus. These are representatives who come from states who have higher state and local taxes, so they're looking for deeper federal deductions that could offset them for their constituents. That is completely at odds with what House Freedom Caucus members are fighting for. So we're likely to see coming out of that meeting with the White House, if things go the way that the speaker is hoping for, an announcement of what those changes will look like and an agreement and maybe a consensus that the votes are there for it to pass out of the House floor sometime soon. Torian Small live for us on Capitol Hill. Torian, thank you so much. Well, he has his sights set on becoming the next mayor of New York City, but now former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo appears to be the subject of a federal investigation. Two sources tell CBS News the DOJ is revisiting Cuomo's testimony to Congress about his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Cuomo says the probe amounts to election interference. Now, CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott McFarland joins us live. He's been following this all for us. Okay, Scott, can you piece together this story for us here?
And we're trying to piece it together. We have two sources telling CBS News that there's an investigation, a criminal investigation underway, but it's difficult to get a measure of it because the Department of Justice isn't commenting on it and nothing has been filed here. Let me start off with what Mr. Cuomo's spokesperson says, that they have not been notified of an investigation. There have been no subpoenas issued, and they call this a politically motivated investigation, election interference, and the word they use is lawfare, politically motivated. Here's what we know for sure, that congressional Republicans have been pushing the Department of Justice for months now to open an investigation into Mr. Cuomo. They allege he perjured himself. He lied to Congress in 2024 when he testified to Congress in 2024 about his response as governor in the state of New York to the 2020 COVID pandemic and about the deaths in nursing homes there. They allege there's perjury. Cuomo certainly would disagree with that accusation, but this is the grounds they say the Department of Justice should have to investigate. But opening investigation is just that. It's opening an investigation. Doesn't mean it's going to find anything. Certainly doesn't mean there's going to be any case made.
And Scott, another case I know you've been keeping an eye on. The U.S. Justice Department announced it is dismissing civil lawsuits against police departments in both Louisville, Kentucky and Minneapolis, Minnesota. Remember, those cases came about after the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd at the hands of police officers. Can you tell us about these lawsuits and why they're being dismissed now?
And we saw the motion filed in Minneapolis late this morning by the Department of Justice to end that civil litigation against the Minneapolis Police Department. They're also stepping back from their oversight and their, I guess, entanglement with the Louisville Police Department, because the Justice Department and the Trump administration wants to get out of this business, they say. They don't want to have this type of years-long federal oversight of law enforcement agencies. They argue it's ineffective, it is costly, and that it's better to have a local control and a local oversight over local police departments. This is a sea change in this new administration where they are getting their Civil Rights Division, an historic part of the U.S. Department of Justice, out of oversight of local police departments. Louisville and Minneapolis, arguably two of the highest profile considering the deaths of Ms. Taylor and Mr. Floyd, but also agencies that have been under the thumb and under the scrutiny of the feds for some time now. And the Department of Justice says now is the time to get out of those departments' way. It's going to be a controversial decision, no doubt, but there's also some sense, especially in Minneapolis, where they have their own new local oversight in place. They were getting it ready to work with the Department of Justice. They intend to keep that in place locally to keep an eye on the police department.
And Scott, you have some exclusive reporting on a shakeup of how the Justice Department gives money to local police departments. What have you learned there?
Yes, speaking of police departments, CBS News has confirmed that the Department of Justice, in those prized grant dollars they give to local police departments who have budget problems, is changing the priorities for how you can apply and get the money. They've taken away the priorities for departments that initiate initiatives on hate crime reduction, domestic extremism, community violence intervention, which has been a big thing in recent years. Instead, the Trump administration wants police departments to apply for money for border security, immigration, and opioid combatant. This is a different set of priorities. I've spoken to a number of former Department of Justice officials who say all of those priorities are good ones, but this is clearly a change in priorities, and this could very much impact police departments that prioritize community intervention and hate crime reduction. And one other note, they took a couple words out of the criteria for this year's grants. They are no longer prioritizing workforce diversity. That is in line with a lot of changes inside the Trump administration.
Certainly. All right, Scott McFarland live for us in Washington. Thank you so much for that update, Scott. Well, we have some new updates on those escaped inmates in New Orleans. Our Katie Weiss is on the ground with those new details. We'll have more after the break. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Let's take it to New Orleans now, where authorities have recaptured a 5th inmate involved in last week's jailbreak, but 5 are still on the loose. The 10 inmates escaped through a hole in the wall behind a toilet 6 days ago. And CBS News has obtained new surveillance video of one of the jailbreak suspects' capture. Take a watch. Yeah, those tense moments add up to authorities nabbing Gary Price yesterday. At the top left-hand corner of your screen, you can see officers swarming a home in a residential neighborhood. Price was inside that home. And we've learned a jail employee has also been arrested, accused of aiding in this escape. Lots of new developments here. Let's get right to CBS News reporter Katie Weiss, who's been following all of them. Katie, what do we know now?
Well, you're right. I've been here for the last 6 days since these 10 inmates first escaped this facility here behind me in the middle of the night Friday morning. Now, the AG was actually just here touring the facility and taking a closer look at the cell that was breached in that brazen escape. She says that she doesn't buy that maintenance worker's story that he was coerced or threatened by one of the inmates and forced to turn the water off. She says that he had plenty of chances to report what was going on and did not take the opportunity to do so. Now, that maintenance worker is charged with 11 charges, all felonies, and he is facing a $1.1 million bond. So definitely some staunch consequences up at stake right now for that facility worker. We also know that some other employees have been suspended, others have been reassigned, and that potentially other criminal charges could be coming against other staff members here as well. Some other things that we know, I did ask about how long had these inmates been plotting this escape. The AG says she doesn't know that just yet, exactly how long they've been, sitting and thinking about it, but she did add that some of these inmates have been here for quite a long time, and that the more years you have to sit and think, the more edgy you get, and also the more familiar you get with the weaknesses and security problems with the facility, and start to be able to craft a plan such as this.
And Katie, what about the people who live in this community? I mean, some of these inmates are accused of violent crimes. What are they telling you?
I think there's a wide variety of emotions, but yesterday's city council meeting here in town really said it all. There was a lot of tension among residents who live here, city leaders, the sheriff's office leaders as well. People are scared, they're frustrated, they're angry, wondering how could this happen? Why didn't we know sooner? All of those feelings. But in addition to that, I think the immediate feeling is there's still 5 of these guys out on the run, on the loose, and witnesses, prosecutors, and one victim's family has been placed under protection just in case for their safety. And today, when the AG was here at the sheriff's office, she did add a message for the public. This is what she wanted to say, quote, "Be alert. We still have 5 escapees who are presumably armed. If they see something, they should report it. And if they are fearful, they should reach out to the DA's office or a victim's witness coordinator." So definitely the AG says she's staying on top of this, but at the end of the day, people just really want to see accountability, and that's something we're going to continue to follow for you.
Katie Weiss, live for us in New Orleans. Thanks so much, Katie. Well, coming up after the break, people across the Southeast picking up the pieces after a series of devastating and fatal storms swept through that region. We take a closer look at those recovery efforts coming up. We are continuing to follow the devastation left behind in the Midwest and the Southeast following a series of severe storms that swept through the region this week. Small towns in Oklahoma are still cleaning up the debris left by toppled trees and damaged buildings. And take a look at the damage to this home. A tornado in Blanco ripped off the entire roof. This is about 2 hours east of Oklahoma City. Emergency management says 10 buildings were destroyed in these storms. The Red Cross is helping storm victims with recovery efforts. And check this out, video of a tornado that touched down in Jackson, Tennessee. You can see debris floating in the air after this twister ripped off part of a factory roof. And over in Alabama, this tornado hit Central Heights just east of Waterloo. That storm system brought hail the size of golf balls to places like Huntsville. CBS News correspondent Nicole Valdez is on the ground with more on the recovery efforts today.
Well, winds were clearly powerful enough here in Madison, Alabama. It not only tore the garage door off this home. Check out all the bricks on the ground here. They came flying off the side of this home. That siding is all that's left exposed. This after a rare and terrifying tornado emergency alert. That is the highest level of a tornado alert possible, warning anyone in its path that they could be in imminent danger. The National Weather Service says at least one twister moved through parts of Huntsville last night, leaving some 15,000 or so, even as far away as Athens, Alabama. That's 17 miles from where I'm standing, without power. Now, the homeowners in this home, they're safe, thank goodness, but they hid under their stairwell when they heard things get eerily quiet and recognized that something may be happening, especially after seeing some reports of that twister further northwest of where they live. So what we're talking about now is the impacts, of course, homeowners like this having to clean up this damage. Meanwhile, there are still tens of thousands without power, and those outages have forced some local school districts to close today. Back to you.
And Jess, I want to bring you in. I couldn't help but notice the blue skies there behind her. Finally, they're getting a bit of a break. I mean, they're still cleaning up. They're not out of it yet, but at least the weather is tapering off a bit.
Exactly. The recovery process has started. We're tracking that storm, though. It's not done just yet. It's now just moving to the northeast as it starts to really break apart within the next 48 hours. However, there is still some more severe weather on the way for those friends up into the northeast. So I want to dive into that right now on the map and show you a few things going on. We're keeping a close eye on New York, Boston, over into D.C. as the storm continues to swirl its way offshore. It's an area of low pressure, so it works in a counterclockwise direction, bringing with it some heavy amounts of rain, some gusty winds. We're not really too concerned about tornado activity to the same extent as we were earlier this week, but what we could still see is large hail associated with a lot of these bigger thunderstorms that continue to track off closer to the coastline as we head into the evening hours tonight. I mean, this is just around 10 o'clock tonight. Notice that light to moderate rain with some severe pockets that start to really gain some strength as we head into our Thursday forecast. You'll notice that as we zoom in closer to places like Boston, all the way over to Rhode Island, just along Long Island too. This is what we're gearing up for Thursday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon around this exact time. Now, on the back end of that storm, we need to look a little bit more about today, or look at what's happening for us today. And northern portions of Arkansas, southern portions of Missouri still can gear up for severe weather as we head into this afternoon. On the front end of the storm system, over into the Outer Banks, closer to the Carolinas, that's where we're also potentially seeing some heavier amounts of thunderstorms, which could produce large hail, anywhere up to around an inch in size. And then to add to that, you're also seeing that on the back end of the system as it starts to decay. Places like northern Arkansas stretched all the way down into southern Missouri. I'm keeping a close eye on them right now as our friends over in the West Coast, they're dealing with a lot of heat. We'll keep you updated on that forecast here in the Weather Center. For now, I want to send it over to you, Liz.
Jess, thank you. Our monitors to Pakistan, where a suicide bombing targets a school bus, killing 5 people, including 3 children. Dozens were also wounded in that attack in the southwestern part of the country. Nobody has claimed responsibility for this attack yet, but this region has been rocked for years by separatist groups. Pakistan's military accused, quote, Indian proxies of being behind the attack. No word yet from New Delhi on the allegations. Russian President Vladimir Putin visits the Kursk region for the first time since Moscow claimed to recapture that region. You can see Putin meeting with leaders and visiting a nuclear power plant. Ukrainian forces made a surprise assault into Kursk last year in one of their biggest battlefield successes in the more than 3-year war. But Russia announced last month its forces had pushed out the Ukrainian army. Kyiv, meanwhile, denies that claim. And back here in the States, 19-year-old Ximena Arias Cristobal will appear in court moments from now for a bond hearing. You might remember she was arrested by ICE over a traffic stop earlier this month. Georgia state officials dropped the original citations once they realized she was not responsible for making an illegal U-turn. But federal officials say the woman from Mexico is in the U.S. illegally. She remains in ICE custody and faces deportation. Now, turning our monitors now to the Middle East, the death toll from Israeli strikes on Gaza rose to 82 today. Officials say several women and children were killed in those attacks. The strikes come as Israel faces mounting pressure to allow aid into Gaza. Food and medicine have not been inside the enclave for nearly 3 months. Health officials warn the region is on the brink of famine. United Arab Emirates reached a deal with Israel to allow trucks into Gaza, but those supplies have yet to be distributed. All right, turning our monitors back to the White House as we wait for the departure of the South African president. Our team has a full recap of the explosive White House meeting between Trump and the president of South Africa.